Hello, Learn Fresh community. This is Nick Monzi, CEO and co-founder, joined by Calvin Seibert, our Chief Academic Officer. So excited to bring an incredibly new and refreshing opportunity to you today that we've built in response to the social justice movement that's happening in our country. In June, after the senseless murders of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, and others, our team spent some time in real reflection, thinking about how we can use our space and our platform to further advance the mission of our work. Many of you know that we've been deeply embedded in the Black community and communities of color since our founding. It's a part of our identity and it's a part of where we work on a day-to-day basis. But we really believe that in this moment, everyone has an obligation to do more and to figure out what actions they can take to advance conversations around racial and social justice. Our first action item that we included in our announcement in June was the creation of a new fellowship called the Learn Fresh Fellowship for Culturally Inclusive Education. And the idea behind it is that we're going to hold space for educators and curriculum writers of color to build new content that uplifts the narratives, themes, and stories of communities of color around the United States. The reality is that most of our curricular content in the US is written from a white first lens, written by folks who are not in communities of color and often are not representative of communities of color. And we want to change that. We want to create a pipeline for folks who are creative and have a passion for building content for students to start to uplift and make more visible these narratives from our communities that we believe should be embedded in education nationwide. So that's the framing for this opportunity. Calvin and I are going to spend some time just in conversation talking a little bit about it and how we're going to move education forward through this work. So Calvin, if you want to just, a couple minutes, take me back to how you came into this work, where your passion for the work is and how that all got started.
Perfect. So I've been I was a school teacher for 20 years in the Detroit area. I taught grades K through 8, which was an amazing experience for me. As a kid, I always wanted to be either an NBA player or a rapper, but due to my jump shot and my rap skills, that didn't really work out. But I still found my space in education. I've always been a guy who experienced, the education world, and as a kid, it wasn't fair. It was strange because I didn't see educators that looked like me. So I ended up deciding to become a teacher because of that. I said, I want to be the best teacher that I never had. I want to be, an educator, a positive role model. I want to change kids' lives. That was my goal. And I remember my first interview for a job. And when I said that I just want to change kids' lives, I remember the owner of the school, he said, that's a really passionate answer. And I said, coming fresh out of college, I was like, that is really what I want to do. And I thought it was going to be a little bit easier. But, throughout the 20 years of putting in the time and work and really listening to the kids and the parents, I've come up with a lot of different ways of understanding what parents and students need. And when we talk about curriculum, that is a huge area where we really need to shift and make it fair for all of our students. Kids learn in all types of different ways, but when we really focus on the background of the kids and we tie into the things that go on in their own community and their culture and things like that, then it starts to make sense for the kids. It is tough to learn in a foreign land, if you will. But now we have that opportunity to share a new way, a new style, learn fresh, a fresh way to learn, once again, for our students and our educators to help change this world here.
Can you talk a little bit more about how you saw that disconnect play out in the classroom? Like, are there, from a curricular content standpoint, were there moments when you'd put something in front of kids and you'd just be like, okay, like this is not, this is not going to make sense. This is not going to connect to them, you know?
Totally. So I can recall like adjusting the lessons, changing the names of the kids sometimes. That even stands out. You know, names are different. You know, right now I'm thinking about the comedian that he does this skit about the substitute teacher, and he's the sub is really trying to uh, pronounce the names of the kids in the classroom, but he keeps saying the names the wrong way. But it's funny because if he was if he had a different experience, or if he was around kids that had names like that, then it would make sense. So for me, you know, being a school teacher, I remember, you know, when you say a kid's name really stands out. If you mess up a kid's name on the first day of school, that could actually ruin that kid's, you know, confidence early. So, you know, that does stand out. I remember lessons that have names that you know that are really not the kids' names in the Black communities. And so I was like, I know what I'm going to do today. I'm going to change this lesson into all of the kids' names in the classroom. So now you got Kanye. I remember my student Kanye. Um, you know, I'm throwing him into the lesson, and I'm throwing Paris into the lesson, and I'm saying all these names because I remember all of my students. But you know, it made a connection for the kids, because to see Stacy, Katie, Kevin, you know, more common names, it kind of disconnects with the kids. But now they see their names in this work. Now they're like, yeah, this makes sense, Mr. Seibert. I want to, yeah. I remember doing things like that. I remember adjusting lessons, writing lessons, and having the kids write about their favorite, you know, rappers or their favorite entertainers, you know, Will Smith and I remember back then it was Soldier Boy. So those were really popular. Those were really popular entertainers. And when I would throw those names into a lesson, now you have something more content than you would really have if you were just to give the kids the normal lesson, the normal curriculum that's in that book. I remember doing a reading lesson, and one of the kids actually said something about something that was going on that normally doesn't happen in the Black community. Sometimes there's single parent homes and things like that, and the kids, I remember they said, is that he said, one of the kids said something like, is that his real dad? And that's something that that was a conversation I didn't really want to have in that moment, because we were working on fluency and comprehension, but that was a real question for that kid. Is that his real dad? And so you know, we as educators, we do have to step back and look at it from a different lens, because if we don't, we'll stay right where we are, and change won't happen. So just across the board, you know, as an educator, you know, educators know we have to reinvent ourselves a lot. You know, usually every year I reinvented myself in my classroom, because I had a new group and I didn't want them to know what their brother and sister had. You know, Mr. Seibert is going to do this year, and I wanted to switch that up so that I could be the, you know, the best teacher that I could be for those kids. You know, I can't be the same teacher teaching a fourth grade class for a kindergarten class. It's a different it's a different hat.
Yeah, definitely. And like that idea of representation is super interesting, because like, you know, I even noticed this when we do events, right? So like if we're in a predominantly Latino community, and the person who's, you know, we do these certificate ceremonies, right, where we hand out certificates at the end, and if the speaker, whoever's announcing the kids' names as they come up and grab the certificates, if they're not familiar with the Latino community, then they're like saying the kids' names all the wrong way, and the kids are like like laughing, but also like kind of like what the heck is going, like what's up with this person, like come on, you know. So like it's interesting how that little thing, whether it's in a one-off event like that or in a classroom, can really help to make a kid feel valued, and that gets like the broader idea of representation in curriculum. And then I think there's also this idea of like the narrative and like the stories and the themes that you're sharing with kids. And like, you know, just from, if you think about, you know, most of our work is in STEM, and I think one of the cool things about this fellowship is that it's content agnostic, so you can really come into it from any discipline and build any sort of content that you want to, for any subject. But you know, from a history standpoint, right, like all of the things that I say are unearthed for like mainstream society through everything that we've seen go on with the Black Lives Matter movement over the past few months, you know, the incident in Tulsa from the early 1900s, and all these other kind of smaller stories that society at large really hasn't been aware of, like making sure that those conversations become a part of the mainstream so that the bigger picture of a community, whether it's about social justice or racism, or if it's just about like, you know, uplifting, you know, folks who have done extraordinary work from the, you know, indigenous Native American community or from the Latino community or from the Black community, like those examples hold real power for kids so they can see themselves in the broader, you know, kind of trajectory of their lives, like where they can go, you know, who they can model themselves after, etc. Do you feel that?
Yeah, and that's deep because I remember given the curriculums to teach, and noticing like, oh, okay, so we're only going to teach Black history during this specific time.
Right, 1 month of the year.
And I'm just like, okay, I got a little creative with my classroom, and I was like, it doesn't necessarily have to be just that month. It could be throughout the year. You could bring things up, and you can challenge the kids to do some research. And especially now that, you know, all you have to do is Google something, you can really, you know, the kids now have a better opportunity to learn more about their own history, because I went to pretty much predominantly white schools, and I didn't really learn about my history during that time. My mother would usually take me to the library so that I could learn things there. And she'd always say, you know, get a book on Black history. And she'd make me do a book report on it. And just like, yeah, she wanted me to make sure that I knew my history. And there's so much of it, but, you know, as a kid, you're like, okay, I can build on this. And I remember one time she said, my mom, she said, you don't ever want to be a grown man and not know your history. And she said, and it's not the school's job to do that for you. You have to. And it's like that, and that's deep, because it's the school's job to make sure that we can read, make sure that we can, you know, that we master our math skills, and just there's all these things that are important, but it's not important yet.
Right.
For folks to find out about their own history, and it's definitely not enforced. And yep, like you said, just 1 month, that really can't do it. And it's always usually the same. It's Dr. Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks, and it's like the kids learn that every year. It's the same thing. Instead of pulling in other, you know, Black inventors or other people that just, you know, have put their foot into this world and have made a difference. So it's special to be able to be in the education space and to have those resources and to include it, because, you know, it's just like, it's like having money and not doing anything with it. You know, yeah, a lot of times principals are shoving different things to the teachers that they have to implement in their classrooms. And a lot of times, sometimes it's just overwhelming. It's just too much. And so I get it, but as an educator, everybody has a sweet spot for themselves, and whatever that is, whatever that special thing is for them, you can use that as leverage to help the kids and to get them to understand what is really important. And a lot of kids don't really know what's important, and they expect to get that from the adults and the teachers and parents in their lives. So now is a really tricky time because, you know, there are a lot of parents that feel like it's the teacher's job to do everything. And now
right,
it's being more put back on the parent, and the teacher is kind of, you know, is the video, if you
right,
will. Like now, you know, you can cut this video on and you can learn, but the parent needs to be right there in the forefront, right next to that kid and helping that kid and assisting. And as a parent, the first teacher, remember that, the
yeah,
first teacher, the parent,
yeah,
it should make sense. You know, it's like there's a shifting in the world going on. You can't blame everything on a teacher.
yeah,
And at the same time, the parents have to step up in this time, um, and do as much as we can as parents to help our kids, because we've never been in a space like this, and I hope we never come back to a space like this.
yeah.
But in this moment, we can make a difference, though. We can make a difference, and we can do what we need to do, and that's why we're here.
Yeah. Yeah. And the point around, just going back to your point around history for a second, and what gets kind of shown and what gets withheld from students. You know, I've always thought about history like history is a thing that's ongoing. You know, like Black history didn't start with Martin Luther King, right? It's been a narrative for thousands and thousands of years, and in our country for hundreds of years, as is the case with, you know, the Asian American community and the Latino community in the U.S. and beyond. You know, where have those populations come from? You know, what does history look like in Latin America, and how does that impact or engage with the United States history? And I think a lot of times, you know, partially just because maybe of our societal guilt, we like withhold a lot of that narrative, particularly from our earlier history, right? But that doesn't mean that there aren't valuable lessons to be learned. That doesn't mean that there aren't really important folks to uphold and show to our students. And I think that we sometimes just choose to like cherry pick the things that are the most palatable for our kids, and like we bring that to the forefront of our teaching over time. And that cuts across subjects. Like the impact of that on a history class also has a really significant impact on a science class, right? Because like as you said, there are Black inventors who've done incredible work throughout history. How often does that get pushed to the forefront of a classroom's narrative? You know, how often does that become a theme?
Right.
So I think we just need to, I understand why it's happened. I also understand that like we need to be truthful about our history, and acknowledging our history can help make sure that the future of our society continues to move in a positive direction that's inclusive for everyone. So that spirit definitely sits at the center of what we're attempting to do here across all subjects.
Yeah. And speaking
Yeah.
on that, I remember being in a school called St. Anthony's. It was a Catholic school. I was raised Catholic, so that's usually the type of schools that I went to.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember one time I was just not being treated fair. I was always the only Black kid in the class, so it was like, you know, I was treated different. Some kids were cool with me, and the other ones treated me, you know, how they wanted to treat me, how they were raised, pretty much. And I remember my mom saying things like, you know what, like you are a cool kid, and no matter what those kids say to you at that school, like just know that in your heart, because when you come back to your neighborhood, all your friends are knocking on the door and waiting to see you and waiting to have fun, you know, and all of that. And my neighborhood was Black and white. It was mixed.
Yeah.
So, you know, I had white friends running over to draw wrestlers and color wrestlers, and I had black friends coming over to do the same thing and play basketball and baseball and just. But it was different because the school that I went to was in a different city, so it was like pretty much 20 minutes from my home. But I remember like feeling uncomfortable though, and like wanting to sit in the back of the classroom, just kind of like to be away from everybody so that people wouldn't pick on me and things like that. And so what stands out though is my mom used to say, um, you know, when you go to school, everybody learns the same thing. And she's like, so if those kids are picking on you, like they're missing out on what they're supposed to be learning. So why don't you just like tune them out and get what you need to get in that classroom? And I have to honestly say, I wasn't the kid that wanted all A's. I didn't. I was okay with B's and C's because I just education, it was important, but my parents never said all A's and all A's. You got to get all A's. So that was never anything that was important to me. But when you put me in sports, I wanted to be an A+ sports player though. But
Yeah.
the sports was more my thing. But the education space, it was like I started to realize like, wow, like you're that does make sense though. You know, even in fifth grade, that made sense to me. Like these kids are being mean to you and they're not learning. So why don't you get a step ahead of them, ignore them pretty much, and keep learning. And I remember a time where it actually worked. Like I was called on and not expected to know what the answer was, and I knew what the answer was, and the kids didn't expect me to know. And so it's deep because everybody experiences racism and things like that in their own way. Like just it's just something that like when we talk, it's a disease, and everybody responds to it differently, and it affects everybody different. Some people can't bounce back from it. Some people it ruins them, and some people push past it, and some people latch onto it and start treating other people the same way. So I'm just glad that my parents were really strong on teaching me treat everybody the way you want to be treated, flat out. Just if you want to be respected, then respect people. And that boils down to even a baseball game. When you got to shake the kid's hands at the end, and I remember a kid spit on his hand and went to shake my hand, and I told my dad, and I was like, I didn't want to do it. He's like, I wouldn't have shook his hand either. But he did that because we beat them, and but that's just another form of it. It didn't make me sad. It was just like, dang, that was rude. Like,
Right.
That was mean. I wouldn't do that. He's like, right. Would you spit on your hand and shake someone's hand? No. And this was before coronavirus. So.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah. there's a whole world that we could, a whole world of a conversation that we could go down in terms of that. And like, it's just for me, one of the things like normalizing conversations about folks who are different than you. And it's not only about like, it's not, and like pulling it back to what we're doing with our work as a core of the organization's functioning, and also through the fellowship, right? It's often about normalizing conversations about folks who are different from you in all communities. So you're talking about like going way back to your example about including black names, black focused names in curriculums in your predominantly black classrooms. What does it look like to do that in predominantly white classrooms too? And how does that help white students normalize conversations about black kids, right? What is it? That is really important. And like that's one of the things I love about Matthews, for example, is there are players from all over the world in that product. So you can be in any community in the country, and you are forced to, in a really gentle way, engage with a whole range of people who are not like you. And maybe that, maybe something as simple as that, but maybe also something as simple as learning more about the history of a different type of community, a community other than yours, helps that kid who spits in his hand make a different choice because he looks at you as just another human being with a
Right.
different story, but an equally valuable story as his. Maybe it helps make progress against that. And if we can make progress against that, when that kid who chooses not to spit in his hand grows up, he makes better choices as an adult.
But remember that kid that spits in his hand, he didn't just dream that and wake up and just do
True.
that. That kid that spit in his hand, and I'm gonna take it back to old school. Sweep the leg, Johnny. In Karate Kid, um, that sensei was teaching him to, and I'm watching the series right now because they have the Cobra Kai on Netflix now, so I'm all in. But so your sensei or your trainer or your parent can teach you what to do in the wrong way, and that's what ends up happening. And but you're going to listen to what that person is telling you to do. You're going to listen to that. Most kids, they're going to listen to their coach, and they're going to listen to how they're being raised, and they're going to just follow in suit with that.
Mm-hmm.
So and we just have to say it. Some people are mean and some people are not. That's just what it is. And some parents parent mean and some parents parent cool. It's just that's the way. And so the kids, it's kind of sad though, because the kids don't get a chance. Like, kids aren't born into this world racist. They're taught a way to be. And until that adult accepts their disease, that thing is going to probably be passed on from generation to generation to generation. And that's the thing that we're really trying to focus on to try to change. That's the only way we can change the world. We gotta get into that person, or that person has to accept it and want to change, because it's hard to change. Nobody's really going to change if they don't want to. It's like something has to happen, either internally with the family member or something, to get the light bulb to go off, which is the same thing what's going on with Black Lives Matter right now. Mm-hmm. Like, it's like enough is enough. How many more times are we going to have to watch what has been happening before? It just hasn't been televised and recorded. Mm-hmm. But now it's like enough is enough, and we've had enough, and our children have had enough, and our children are, who would ever thought that we could see a murder on TV nowadays and things like that? Like, our movies have ratings. Like, it's almost like social media needs to have ratings now or something, because I don't want my kids seeing something bad like that. I remember back in the day, there was this movie called Faces of Death, and it was really bad, and it showed like these real deaths that really happened, like people jumping off buildings and things like that. And my father would always say, "Oh, I don't ever want you to see that." I could see other things like Freddy Krueger, Jason, and stuff like that, but he's like, "You should never see that." And I feel like that's exactly what the world is seeing now, but right on social media. It's too easy to see this, which is probably making our students feel really uncomfortable. And that's a whole nother conversation, but it's time to wake up. It's time to wake up, and it's okay to look at it from different lenses. I'm just, because I am an educator, so I'm looking at all these shades here, these are covers for my light. But when you think about it, every person in the world has a different view of what they're seeing. And then we just sit here and say, "Oh, we're just going to look from this for all our lives." Like, are you kidding me? Do you see what you're missing out on? All these other different perspectives, and until people get to see it, another person's perspective, they're going to always look at it from their lens, and it's going to always be the same. So I'm thankful that we are in a position where we can make a difference. Um, we can connect with the right people, because that's usually the issue. If you don't have the right resources to make something happen, if you don't have the right platform to make something happen, then usually change doesn't happen.
Yeah.
So we have the platform. We've there are amazing teachers all over the world, and they're all different shades of colors, and we are in a space where we can share a way to help all of our kids.
Yeah.
They're the future.
Yeah. And so the building off of the point around the family, and that we can transition to the fellowship stuff after this, because this is all really awesome content. But the the there are a number of spheres of influence around a student now, and many of them didn't exist even 20, 30 years ago. And I think it's that creates an opportunity. It also creates risk. But I think as an organization that's working in the education space, and as educators generally, both us and in our community, it creates an opportunity to take all this information that kids see and distill it down into something that at least builds more empathy for them. I've seen folks in the white community, folks who I'm close to. I'm close to folks who I know are racist. I'm also close, close in proximity, maybe not close in spirit. I'm also close to folks who've grown up in racist environments and have intentionally worked to expose themselves to other things and have evolved past that personally, right? And I see that a lot in the younger generation. So the family is one sphere of influence, and there's probably little that we can do beyond broader societal education to control that. The teacher in the classroom is another sphere of influence, and while you can't necessarily control the teacher, and not control is maybe a wrong word, you want to kind of shift or shape perspective so that we can at least create the opportunity for more broad decision making by the student. But you can maybe influence the teacher, but the content that you create can certainly play a role in that. Yep. And then the third piece is like social media. Is the world, and social media is a real sphere of influence for kids. And teaching them, it's hard to stop a 12-year-old from seeing some of this stuff, but what you can do to shape their perspective of how they absorb it, and use that to build empathy so that they make better choices when they're on the baseball field with you, or when they're, an adult and in a workspace or whatever. Like, creating that base of empathy for me is what leads to the generational shift that we hope to see.
Yeah, and that's that word empathy. It just is so important. And when I think about it, it starts in the home. It does. It's like caring about things. It's a lot of times in our community where we have this tough skin that's like it's almost cool to not care, if you know what I mean. Like what's the saying? Catch flights, not feelings. Things like that. Like, when really that's just avoiding. No, you have feelings,
right?
And you have an opinion, and it's okay. Whatever it is, as long as it's how you really feel. But now it's like, if it's not cool though, if that thing is not whatever it is, if it's not caring, it's not loving, then that thing can probably grow, and it can get worse and worse and worse. And before you know it, just like a disease, it can take you out.
Yeah.
Or it can actually take somebody else out because of how you looked at it. Right. And it's like, that was something really big for me as a father, husband, teacher, educator. Like, the main thing is, in my opinion, the golden rule. Like, treat everybody the way you would want to be treated. And I mean everything. Like, don't you shouldn't be cruel to animals. You shouldn't be cruel to, I remember back in the day, it was cool to go around and snatch bags for Halloween. Like the older kids would snatch kids' bags. Like, dang, really? Like, what kind of, you don't have any empathy towards any, a kid. You know how that'll make a kid feel? Like, to do those types of things. And I know, we've our world has kind of been addressing it, the no bullying and things like that. And, but these are really huge issues that are causing kids to commit suicide and just not even want to go to school. Can you imagine how many kids now, because they were getting bullied, are probably so happy that they can go to school online? Like, that's a whole nother space that, the average kid probably doesn't even share that. Like, because of the pandemic.
Right.
And so we do it well, but if we can try to get the world to understand how important it is to try to get kids to care about themselves, to care about their families, to care about their community, to care about their friends, to care about people that don't look the same as them.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that to me is the $1 billion book.
Yeah.
Like, how do
Yeah.
we get just kids to care? And it's like, it starts with inside, though. Like,
Right.
the Michael Jackson song, it starts with the man in the mirror. It does really start with you, but the right person has to teach you. And if the wrong person teaches you, then you got to get around a Mr. Miyagi.
Yeah.
I'm going to bring it back to Karate Kids. Like, there's two types of senseis out here. There's one that's going to say kill or no mercy, and there's one that's going to say we only use this for defense.
Right.
Karate is not to be taught to beat up on people and bully people, but if you got the sensei that's telling you to do that, and that's the way to be cool, then you're going to do that. Mm-hmm. Especially if you don't have a father figure that's telling you, no, man, don't, nope. And actually, I'm going to pull you out of that class because that sensei is teaching you the opposite of what I'm teaching you here.
Yeah. That's such an awesome point, and the sensei metaphor is well taken. I think that transitions really well into what we're looking to do with this fellowship, because I think it's part about content creation, right? It's part about building out these experiences that uplift different narratives beyond the quote unquote mainstream. And it's also about building leaders, like the educators who are coming into this fellowship and working through the process with us. They can be those senseis that help the student population and the educator population at large say, like, okay, this is how we're going to build empathy for our kids. This is how we're going to open up the range of perspectives that our students can draw from as they're building themselves and they're making their own decisions throughout their lives. So I want to just dig into what this is going to look like a little bit, and then we can go back and forth talking about how it's going to be set up, and as a former classroom teacher, how this kind of reads to you. But the fellowship is really going to be an opportunity that's going to be very close knit to the organization. Maximum of 3 educators are going to be selected for the fellowship in 2021. So if you're a part of it, you're going to be really a part of the Learn Fresh team for a year. And I think it's going to be an incredible opportunity for you as an educator to get some space to just think creatively. Maybe you've always wanted to build curriculum content, but you've only done it informally in the classroom. Maybe you've done it in an entrepreneurial setting, but not at scale. The first third of the fellowship, really through April, is going to be focused on conceptualizing the experience. So what narratives, themes, stories do we want to uplift? What content do we want to feature, in relation to both the passion of the educator and their expertise, and just building out the roadmap and the storyboard for how that's going to flow. The second third of the experience is going to really focus on content creation, so actually writing the curriculum. And then the third part of it from the beginning of the school year in 2021 on is going to focus on piloting the curriculum. So taking what the educator's written and then putting it into practice with one of our education partners somewhere in the US. And I think it'll be a really awesome opportunity for an educator, whether they've done a lot of curriculum writing before or not, to see their work go through a full creative process and then end up in the hands of students and see how they react to it. And then along the way, the goal is that we're going to leverage our partners in community, whether that be teams or production partners or education partners, to really provide strong feedback and example and space for these educators to really see what their work can look like at scale. So, how would a team take a program like Math Hoops, but maybe in a different space, and implement that in their community? How would a corporation engage with a project like this? How would a company that produces products, work with an educator to distribute their program at scale? How would a digital developer take their content and turn it into something that's available online? So I think that, beyond just the tangible value of working with our team and really working through the project, the educator is also going to have the opportunity to really benefit from our network and really see kind of the inner workings of how our programs get out into the world. So it's kind of a multifaceted opportunity. So thinking as a classroom teacher, right? Calvin, you worked with students for a number of years, and then you came onto our team. And I know that you were super creative in the classroom, not only with the implementation of our work now, but other experiences over time. Like, what do you see as the potential for this for an educator? What would an educator get out of this, and how could this maybe help them, whether they want to go back into continue with their work in the classroom, because this is obviously not a full-time thing, or move into something more entrepreneurial? What is the benefit that you see?
So I've always got to put myself in the moment, kind of like how when NBA Math Hoops was brought to me. So what we have in the classrooms are tons of unique, experienced educators that, I'm gonna just be honest, they got a lot of skills, but because of the overwhelming responsibility sometimes that can go on in a classroom, they don't have the opportunity to do this. So which makes me think about how when NBA Math Hoops was brought to me, I was actually teaching a really unique class called the Student Success Seminar class, which was a strengthening of ELA, math, financial literacy, motivation, all in one. And so it was a perfect class to teach NBA Math Hoops. And the fact that, as I was sharing earlier, I was one of those teachers that had the creativity going on. Like, I was like, look, this year I'm going to switch it up. My class was going to look completely different. We're going to go this route. I'm going to create a store in this class this year. Everybody's going to have a job. Everybody's going to have to, going to learn how to, pay bills and expenses and all that type of stuff. So what I really think, what we're doing here is we're creating an experience for educators that have been waiting for an opportunity to show their talent. Like, it is a talent to be able to create something and it's going to work, and it's personal to you because you're the one who created it. A lot, when you think about the curriculum in the classrooms, a lot of times, like, teachers are given, teach this, teach that. Oh, this book, I don't really agree with this, but we're going to skip that page and we're going to go to this lesson. It's like, as an educator, you can kind of pull out the things that you want, depending on who your principal is and that patient chart, because, you sometimes have to teach those things because that is a part of the curriculum. And so what really is going to happen, I believe, is we're going to have the 3 teachers that we do select, or educators that we do select, they're going to be the first ones. And I think we're going to be able to roll this thing out and do this continuously because there are so many special educators out here that are waiting for their opportunity. It's almost like, you know, like how basketball players, they're waiting for that opportunity, that draft time to, you know, make it to the league. And, and sometimes you can miss that opportunity. You know, you can miss it by not being in the right place at the right time. You can miss it by not checking your social media when you should have, or for all that, not turning in the application when you should have.
Yeah.
So we're given an opportunity where educators can share what their passion is and help influence the world, not just your classroom, not just your city, the world here. And it's so needed right now because our kids they're crying out, but they just don't even really know how. Our kids are so tough and got so many moves. They're so tough and they've been given, you know, this social media thing. It is almost overwhelming. I couldn't imagine if I being a kid and having access to just, you know, we used to have to watch the news. Nowadays, you don't even have to watch the news. You can sit and go to social media and see things that happen. Yeah, you got to cross-reference it and check it because it could be fake news. But a lot of times it is real news, though. Most times it is. And so this fellowship can actually change. It's going to change communities because, as I said, this special piece of education that each person brings, which is why they're even in the field.
Right.
They're waiting for that opportunity. And I remember being in the classroom and teachers having so many good ideas and they're brought to these meetings and they just go out the window because either they don't have time, you know, the administrators, they don't have time to implement it. They don't want to make that extra meeting. Everything's already scripted. And so, you know, that messes it up for that teacher that could have created something that could change the whole school. Like a culture change could happen. But because the time is not there or they don't trust that teacher or whatever the reason could be. We don't know what the reason is, but a lot of times it just like a paper, it gets tossed to the side. Like,
right.
So.
Yeah, and one of the things we add in the description of the fellowship, and you're starting to get into some of the other stuff that I want to talk about too, but a teacher, a classroom, someone with classroom teaching experience is, in my opinion, best positioned for this fellowship, and in my opinion, more broadly, best positioned to write content for kids. One of the things that frustrates me the most is when these third-party companies have folks with really limited classroom experience creating content or none at all, and how that plays into like the accessibility of the content for students, right? Like content generated by teachers who spend a lot of time in front of students is always better received because it's real. It's embedded in a language that the students understand more authentically.
Yeah, because we know we're there with that kid every day. With those kids every day. We know a lot of times we know things that the parents don't even know because we're around them or we know their personality, you know, and depending on that teacher, educator, you can pull out different things by just talking to a kid. Like you talk to a kid, you get to learn so much about them and then you find out the things that they like. And now you can slightly tie that into your next week's lesson if you're creative enough. Like, look, you know, James said that he wanted to be an engineer. So today we're going to focus on, you know, this story on a young engineer, you know, and it's like that. Those are the things that make the classroom teacher special. Mm-hmm. Like a lot of people always say, like classroom teachers should be getting paid what NBA players and NFL players. I get that, but only thing about that is I think that if that were the case, you'd have a lot of teachers really that don't really like teaching, but doing it for the money.
Doing it for the money.
So I had to deal with it. You know, that was my salary back then, and it just was what it was. But it didn't matter to me. I was like, I'm making a difference, man. Yeah. You know, I don't need to buy a Mercedes Benz. I don't need to buy Versace clothes. I don't need to do all of that. I'm making a difference in these kids' lives, and that's why I'm here. and and all those connections that I would make with the kids are the reason why now they're all trying to find me on social media. Now
It's
they're older,
connected up
like
to you. So the folks know you were in the classroom for 20 years. So
20 years.
it's not like you were, in the classroom for a year and then you decided to go and do some entrepreneurial thing. You were in the classroom for 20 years.
I rode that thing out, man. I was look, and if it wasn't for Learn Fresh, I would still be in the classroom, But it's like there are moments that you do have to level up, and you have to go to the next level so that you can share what you shared in your four walls.
Right.
Like, I get that, and I was okay after leaving the classroom, because I almost hit the ceiling. I felt like it. I was like, how I was saying, I want to reinvent myself every year. It was almost like, well, I really don't have to now. I've got NBA math hoops, and I can teach that, and and I've got my classroom system, the financial literacy program, the money system. So I really would have just probably repeated that over and over, but now I'm in a space where I can help educators that have these ideas, and I'm really excited, and I'm looking forward to those 3 already. I can't wait, because to be in that space and to be able to share like-mindedness, and for those that really were in the paint, not the ones that was sitting on the court side. I mean, the ones in the paint, putting in that work with those students, and caring, and not quitting, and working, and just going for another job for the money. Because there are some teachers that realize, hey, look, this thing is not what I signed up for. I've heard teachers say, these kids are gonna make me go to jail.
Right.
Like, no, you need to leave the classroom then, for real.
Yeah, and I think, like, before we get to the next question here, or the next point that we want to cover, just the fact that educators who are going to be a part of the program, they'll be able to engage with someone like you who's been in the classroom for 20 years, someone like Colleen on our team who is a program administrator and worked in the after school space for 15 years. I've worked as an educator both in and outside of this work for a decade, and there are a lot of folks on the team who have real tangible experience working with students, and also can look at it from the broader external partnership standpoint. So you'll get half a century to a century plus of experience internally, plus folks outside of the organization who obviously understand and know this work really well and will contribute, I'm sure. So really awesome opportunity all around for the educators who will be involved. Thinking about this opportunity longer term, and as we have class after class come through this fellowship, I have some thoughts personally, but I'd love to hear your thoughts around what are your hopes for this? What is the change that you want to see because of this opportunity, and what is the longer term legacy that we're aiming for?
So when I think about the change, so to be able to write a curriculum, and really I'm just going to make it clear, to write a curriculum that will work. It will work. It's like saying, so I've been in this field, I know what the kids need, I'm going to write this plan out, and I know it's going to work because I've already tried it and it has worked. And to be able to share that amongst the world now we're talking about not just changing communities and cities. We're changing. We're going to change the world with this, because the education world it's been in need for so long. We've noticed it. Things have been pulled out of the classroom. A lot of the wrong things have been pulled out of the classroom. There are adjustments that need to be made in the classroom that haven't really been made. And so we've gotten into a space where now it is mandatory. There's no other way. We cannot go back to what we used to do. We can't, because it didn't work. And that's why we're here right now. So we have an opportunity now to create almost like a series, just like Netflix has series that are ongoing, and people just want to keep going back, and you want to watch the next series and things like that. I look at our curriculum the same way. Like once once we get these 3 on board, looking down the line, shoot, next, before you know it, we'll be 30 teachers in 10 years down the line. And can you imagine the 30 sweet teachers that have put in the time? And that's like, I'm gonna just say it, that's like 30 Kobe's out here. Let's go. Like, let's go. We should be able to, and can you imagine what that would look like? Like, it's almost like I remember sitting in that lunchroom with the teachers, and the teachers are throwing their hands up. I was never a throw your hands up teacher. I was always like, I had this crazy faith anyway, so I'm always like, nah, something's gonna change, man. I don't know what it is, but something's gonna happen, man. I'm not throwing the towel in on these kids, man. No way. But you'll be amazed at how many teachers are fed up with what is taught that doesn't work, fed up with the no social emotional learning plan. Like, that is so important to teach the kids how to care, how to have integrity, just teamwork, all of that. Like, those are things that we didn't think we needed to teach, but we do. And now that we have a cool way of teaching it, it's like, it's almost like it is disguised learning. Like, we're not saying, hey kids, we're going to teach you guys how to be just a better kid. No, we're going to show you things that you like, and we're going to slide in education right with it, and we're going to meet you right where we need, and it's going to be connected to the standards, and because we know what we're doing. Like, we do know. And educators that have been in the game, and I'm not even going to knock the educators that are new, because I was new. I was that teacher that jumped out and said, I'm getting ready to change kids' lives. I didn't know how. I just knew that if I came in every day passionately and just cared about my kids and did the work, that something would happen and something would change. I would have never thought that I would be in the place that I am right now, but that's because that's what faith does. You don't know what could happen. If you chuck that shot up from half court, it could go in.
You just gotta believe.
But you just gotta try it. And hey, if it goes in, it goes in. If it don't, it don't. But if it don't go in, you might get another shot at it. Mm-hmm. And that's what education is to me. It's like it's like all of the years of educators that we had to learn how to do it the wrong way, so that we can completely avoid the wrong way. Completely avoid it. We know what that is. We know what it looks like. And now we have an opportunity for, educators of color to be able to stand out. Like, a lot of times in our culture, we like to stand out with our style and fashion and things like that. And I'm not knocking that, because I'm one of those guys too. I like fashion and style. But now we get to put that fashion and style like in education now. Mm-hmm. Like, education was never really cool back in the day. It was almost like, you're called a nerd if you got good grades. Like, brainy Smurf, he's got these big glasses and he's the know-it-all and all of that. But really, I used to tell my students, it's actually cool to be smart, because when you get older, the more you know up here, the more you'll be able to help people and the more you'll be able to understand. So we're creating a unique education experience for educators that really care. And the ones that really care, they're gonna fill out these applications and it's cool to be like just 3, because usually you have to put a limit on it, because before you know it, we could have 30 right now. Right. But we want to do it effectively, and since it's new, we want to tread lightly right now and make sure that we can address all the needs and we can help and it says iron sharpens iron, so strong people can sharpen other strong people, and that's that's what we're looking for.
Yeah. And I think that point is really important. Like, why is it so small? So it is really important that the depth of the experience, based upon what we're trying to get out of this for the folks who are involved, the depth of experience is really, really important. And I think the point around like long-term change it connects to the goal of making sure that the three folks or whomever who were involved in the program this year, when they get to the end of the year, they have a curriculum that's scalable, that they've gotten good, high quality feedback from educators and students who have used it. And they can then take that, whether it's on their own, in their own class, in their own district, through their own venture, in partnership with LearnFresh, we'll see, but like whatever the vehicle is, that they can take that and then share that with the rest of the world in some sort of tangible way. That's one. Two is that they understand the process that they've gone through in depth so that they can do it again. Like if you're creative enough to build one experience, one story, then you're probably creative enough to build more. And like if that person, you know, if we've done our job and they've engaged to the right level of depth in the fellowship, they'll take that work, they'll put it out into the world, and then they'll keep creating. And maybe that person then starts, you know, they have 10, 20, you know, experiences to their name a decade, 2 decades down the road. The third part of it is like getting back to that change maker aspect of like, you know, how can these folks then share the word, right? Can they be a vehicle for the vision of education that really focuses on representation and empathy? Can they take that model and then share it with others and get other educators in their world to do the same when they're building out content, even if that's at the classroom level or maybe beyond? Do they become that voice? And I think that keeping the experience to 3 educators at the most for the first year, but also, you know, I think over time, keeping it as a concentrated experience where they can have a really deep partnership with us throughout the year ensures that those 3 things happen. And sometimes it's not always about scale on the front end, it's about the scale that happens down the road. And I think that's really what our play is with this, is to create that opportunity for the longer term trajectory, you know, when we're 10 years in and we've had 30 educators come through. But those 30 educators, what have they done to further the mission? That's a huge part of it. And I think that gets, you know, all of that gets to, you know, my personal hope for what the longer term trajectory of this is that it creates a new language and vision for how we think about creating content for kids. And, you know, we're focused on communities of color because those are the narratives that have been the least prevalent in our mainstream education system. But ultimately, through that over time, I think we're going to build a really broad base of expertise and content that will be out in the world that everyone can access. And that can really help to create, again, I've said this here and I've said this in other spaces, the generational shifts that we need, rooted in empathy and understanding for all folks in society. I think that play is what excites me the most, and that opportunity is it really speaks to the change that I wish to see through this personally. To kind of bring this all together, because you talked about, like, I'm really excited to just dig in and work with these 3 people, right? What excites you most about the chance of getting to work with these educators? Like, what are you looking forward to as it relates to the fellowship?
Well, the fact that I'm such a people person, I like to meet new people, and of course, educators are super special to me. That's a sweet spot for me. I always feel like when I meet educators, it's like, no matter what color you are, we can talk the same language. You raising kids too? Yeah, we can have that conversation. So I'm really excited about that in itself, like, because of course we have amazing teachers with LearnFresh that are implementing NBA math and doing an amazing job. But to have new fresh educators, you know, I keep using that word fresh. It's like, you know, it's like that. It's like when Zion came into the NBA, like the new person with the new idea. It's like, you know, it's so helpful to be able to brush elbows with other people that have unique and creative ideas. Like, we are all our own person, you know, and our experiences are all different. You know, it's always amazing to hear a teacher's story, you know, because it's always special to me. Like everyone's way to education is different. You know, how did you end up becoming a teacher? I remember the saying was, teachers become teachers because they can't do nothing else. Like, they just give the teachers a hard time, man. We just can't get a break up here because we can't do anything else. Wow, we're helping kids across the board. You know, a lot of educators are sometimes put in more time than parents do, and I hate to say that, but sometimes it is that way. And it's like, you know, to be able to share this and to be able to hear what other educators across the world, what those experiences are, and how they want to make things better. It's like it's like that special thing. Like, you want to make the world better too? Let's go. Yeah, this is how I did. Like, let's go. And I'm man, you got me pumped right now. We gotta wait till next year. I'm ready. I can't wait to meet these new folks, man.
Yeah, I mean, like that spirit resonates so much because so much of what we've been doing, like we have a specific part of the world that we're focused on, but things have been so crazy for months now, and I think that spirit of like, you want to change the world, let's go, like that's embodies who we've been for a long time, and really embodies who we've been for the last 6 months. And I think that having these folks in close connection to our organization, as you said before, iron sharpens iron, it's going to help make us better too, and it's going to help make sure that we stay connected to the communities that we're serving in really authentic ways. I mean, that's not only are we looking to provide value for others, but I know that we really expect this opportunity to provide a lot of value to us in ways that we can then repurpose into, you know, great work in our communities, and repurpose into mission focused work in our communities. So I'm super excited about this. I think it's going to be a really cool opportunity. If you're an educator, sign up, apply. No matter how much curriculum development experience you've had, whether you've done it formally or you've just done it in your own classroom, we want to hear from you, because it takes all kinds. It takes folks with all types of experience, and we really want to have a broad base of folks to select from. And hey, even if you don't get picked for the first year, there's going to be years after that where the opportunity could be yours. So you make sure that you sign up, make sure that you send in an application, make sure that you share with other educators in your network, so that we're creating a broad base of opportunity here. We're looking forward to the year. Any last thoughts, Calvin?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, please fill out that application. I want to say, please, if you know, because sometimes you might second guess yourself, and and don't do that. Sometimes you might, you know, just like basketball, somebody might pass you the ball. Hey, I don't really want to shoot. I got defense on me. That's all right. Don't worry about the defense, because whatever you've created, it just needs to get in the right person's hand so that it can flourish. And we may be the right connection for you. So, you know, when I think about it, I'm like, we're actually creating a dream team. You know, the NBA dream team back in the day, Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, Michael Jordan. I could go on and on, but that's what we're really doing. And you are a part of our dream team. And we just been waiting on you. We have what we need for you, and you just got to fill out that application, and don't second guess yourself. Shoot the shot, and best wishes. And like Nick said, if you don't get picked this year, hey, that's okay. It might be time for you to be picked next year. So it's all about timing. It might be somebody else's opportunity, but don't second guess yourself. You know, educators, sometimes we do that because we're judged by so many, and I get it, parents and administrators, and you know, sometimes ourselves, sometimes we're our own judge, and sometimes we jam ourselves up that way, and we don't think that something is really cool when it really is. So if you got an idea, come on with it. We waiting on it.
I love it. Awesome. So with that, check out the application, apply. If you have any questions, there are a couple emails listed on that application. Just send us a note. It'll be open through the end of October. And then starting in November, our team's going to work internally to figure out who we're going to select for the first cohort of fellows. And then we'll announce on December 15th, right before the holidays. So thanks, everyone. excited for the opportunity, and we'll catch you guys later.
All right.